Okay, so let's get right into it. When we think about a legendary career, we usually picture a straight line, right? A beginning, a middle, and an end. But what if that's the wrong way to look at it? What if the career of someone like Kobe Bryant wasn't a line at all, but a loop, a self-consuming circle, constantly feeding on its own failures and its own triumphs to create something totally new?
And to really get this whole loop idea, you got to start with Kobe's core philosophy. This quote, it tells you absolutely everything you need to know. For him, the process was the entire point. Just taking the shot over and over was way more important than the immediate result. A failure wasn't some dead end. It was just fresh data for the next attempt.
And that's where this whole idea comes from, the Ouroboros. It's this ancient symbol, right? A snake literally eating its own tail. And it perfectly captures this idea of a career that's always recycling itself. The end of one chapter becomes the fuel for the next one. Every single failure is consumed to create a future success. This is the lens we're going to use to really understand the Mamba.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, the serpent eating its tail, where a massive rookie failure basically fuels a legend. Then, the paradox of two kings. Yeah, we're talking Shaq and Kobe. After that, the 81-point singularity, where one man became the entire system. And we'll wrap up with the infinite season, where he kind of transcended the game itself. All right, let's start at the beginning. Or maybe it's better to say the first major turn of the wheel. This is the moment where a pretty catastrophic failure becomes the real origin point for everything that came after.
Let's go back to 1997, playoffs against the Utah Jazz. An 18-year-old Kobe Bryant shoots 4 straight air balls in the clutch, and just like that, the Lakers' season is over. To everyone watching, it looked like a kid choking on the big stage. But in this Ouroboros framework, it wasn't just a failure. It was what our source calls a void event. A moment of total collapse that created this energy vacuum he could then fill with just an insane amount of work.
So how did he process that moment? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. He didn't see it as some personal failing, like he wasn't good enough. No, he saw it as a mechanical error. He figured his legs weren't strong enough yet for a long, pro-level playoff game. So instead of spiraling, he literally went straight to a high school gym and just shot jumpers all night long. He was already eating his own tail, turning the chaos of that loss into the pure order of obsessive work.
And that obsessive mindset, it leads us right into the next chapter, the dynasty years. This wasn't just a story about two superstars who couldn't get along. It was a systemic battle between two totally different basketball philosophies, a paradox that somehow fueled 3 championships.
On one side, you have Shaquille O'Neal. He's the immutable core, a static, gravitational force who just bent the game to his will with pure physics. And on the other, you've got Kobe, the dynamic variable, all about flow, skill, and creative tension, always pushing the limits of the system. I mean, 2 completely different engines trying to power the exact same machine.
And you know who saw this coming a mile away? Tex Winter, the genius behind the triangle offense. The whole system was built for a dominant center like Shaq. But it really struggled when this independent creative force, this lone wolf, this monad, as the source calls Kobe, refused to totally submit to the team's geometric flow. So the feud wasn't just personal, you see, it was philosophical.
But here's the crazy part. For a while, that conflict was their superpower. The creative friction between Shaq's raw gravity and Kobe's dynamic skill was just unsolvable for defenses. It led to 3 straight titles, a period our source calls the Radiant Chump. But by the 2004 finals against the Pistons, that friction became a full-on fracture. The Pistons basically baited Kobe into breaking the system, and the entire loop just collapsed.
So the loop breaks, Shaq is gone, and the Lakers' system is completely stripped of its anchor. What happened next was one of the most extreme experiments in the history of basketball, where one player was basically forced to become the entire cosmic arena himself.
Just look at these numbers from the 2005-06 season. They are absolutely staggering. With Kobe on the court, the Lakers had an elite, top-tier offense. The second he stepped off the floor to rest, their offensive rating plummeted to a number so low it would rank as the 3rd worst in NBA history. The team wasn't just bad without him, it was a completely non-functional entity.
So what does that all mean? It's pretty simple, really. The supporting cast had failed him, the front office had failed him, the entire system was just falling apart. For a guy like Kobe, the only logical response was to take all the energy for himself and just become the system.
And that is how you get this. 81. This wasn't just a player getting hot. This was a singularity event, a moment where one person entered such a deep flow state that he basically tore a hole in the fabric of the team game, making the other 9 guys on the court almost irrelevant.
But, there's a catch. Here's the lesson from this part of the cycle. The Ouroboros can't survive by only eating its own tail. It needs something from the outside. Despite these absolutely heroic, transcendent performances, the Lakers were, let's be honest, a pretty mediocre team. This whole period proved the absolute limit of individual brilliance, and it's what led Kobe to demand a trade in 2007. The loop had to change. And that leads us to the final chapter, the final evolution. After mastering the self, Kobe now had to figure out how to fuse that self with a bigger system to win again, and then how to transform all that energy into something that would last forever.
Then, everything changed. Pau Gasol shows up. Gasol was the perfect relational part, a player who thrived in the spaces between the stars. His basketball IQ allowed the triangle offense to finally work the way it was supposed to, and this forced Kobe into a brand new loop, the trust loop. He finally learned how to use his own gravity, not just to get his own shot, but to create opportunities for the entire team. And the result? 2 more titles.
And if you want to see this new, evolved Kobe in action, you have to look at Game 7 of the 2010 Finals against the Celtics. Kobe had one of the worst shooting nights of his entire career. Now, the old Kobe might have just kept shooting, trying to force it, and probably lost the game. But this Kobe, he adapted. He realized the offense wasn't working, so he poured his energy into something else, rebounding. He grabbed 15 boards, played lockdown defense, and trusted his teammates to hit the big shots. It was the ultimate victory of will over mechanics.
So what happens when the game ends? Well, for Kobe, the loop just kept going. He just changed the arena. He founded Granity Studios, a storytelling company, to create stories about the Mamba mentality. He won an Oscar. He started to show detail to mentor young players. He was basically taking all his on-court energy and transmuting it into an infinite game, the game of legacy.
So at the end of the day, his final act was all about this one thing, making sure his operating system, his mindset, was embedded into the next generation. Through storytelling and through mentorship, he was ensuring that the Ouroboros, the Mamba mentality, would keep cycling through the world long after he was gone.
In the end, Kobe's life is a masterclass in this Ouroboros principle. The process is the substance. He consumed his failures, he shed his skin, he reinvented himself over and over again. He proved that the serpent isn't a thing you are, it's a thing you do. Which kind of leaves us with one last thought. What loop are you perfecting?